Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Join me here today doing a video that is going to be as outdated almost immediately. But yes, no, it's another tier list ranking. And at the time this video goes online, it's only a week until the release of Scream 7. And so I thought it'd be a fun time to reflect on sort of my tier list ranking of the existing current Ghostface killers. Obviously, suffice to say, there'll be lots of spoilers here, so I'm just going to rank them. I'm going to discuss a little bit about the individual killers, and my own sort of ranking. And this is based on sort of multiple factors, so sort of the performance and sort of the character as Ghostface, the performance of them not as Ghostface, how sort of believable they are, how sort of obvious they are as killers, and then other issues or sort of pros and cons that I find along the way. Um, I found this tier list on Tier Maker, and I'll put the link to it in the description below. So, I'd love to hear your own rankings of this. I may update this in a comment when we have seen Scream 7 and know who the Ghost Face or Ghost Faces are. Let me begin with this random list order then, and we begin in the most recent at time of filming Scream film, Scream 6, the only Scream film to feature 3 killers, and our first killer is Detective Wayne Bailey, played by Dermot Mulrooney. Sorry, not Monahan, Mulrooney. The I have many issues with Scream 6, as I discussed in my ranking video of the franchises, and the killers are kind of one of them. And none of them are particularly brilliant. It's not to say they're necessarily bad, in which case, but none of them are particularly brilliant. And I think the problem is sort of how almost sort of obvious and lame the and laboured almost kind of the script and the clues are with it. And to the extent that when we learn the motivation, I'll talk about that a bit later on when I discuss the other killers. The motivation is made painfully obvious through some of the most forced dialogue you've ever heard. And then it's sort of there's only a few people that could realistically be the killer, and thus it transpires. All of them are. And I there are elements of the character that I like. So I think there's a sequence in which Ghostface finally picks up a gun and sort of pursues some of the characters through a shop. It is heavily implied that that must be Detective Bailey. I like that side to Ghostface. Perhaps it's a massive clue that he is the guilty party. Um, there are later scenes, some of the acting is guff. Scenes where his daughter is supposedly dead and he knows that she's not because she's part of the conspiracy. And then later a bizarre confrontation in which he sort of attacks a woman who's got a knife while he has a gun by chasing at her, and sort of the ending. And I wouldn't rank him as the worst, and that honour is still to come, but it's not brilliant. I have many issues with Scream 6, and I think we're very comfortable sort of putting Bailey in the sort of the D tier here, I think. Um, yeah, this is down to another Scream 6 killer. So this is Ethan, who it transpires is one of Wayne Bailey's, well, 2 living children in the film, but 3 children overall, because he has another child who is Richie the Ghostface killer in the previous film. Ethan is a bizarre character. Again, there's such a bizarre script in the film, in that the one of the twins, sort of says that he must be the killer throughout. When she's attacked by Ghostface, randomly he saves her for no reason other than to throw the audience off. There is quite literally no reason at all that he should do it. And then he rocks up at the end as sort of one of the least convincing psychopaths you've ever seen. Um, I Yeah, I don't particularly like the character in his own right, or at least I like sort of the interplay that Bailey gets to have with Sam and Tara, who gets to have with Kirby returning Hayden Panettiere. I find the Ethan character really quite annoying, and most of his reactions with Chad to be quite annoying. So I'm going to put him as the F tier Ghostface. I would certainly put him below his father. He gets less to do, and I find it more annoying. Um, Return to the original now. Our next killer is one of the OG Billy Loomis, Skeet Ulrich. And I think you would struggle. I think you would struggle to find anyone who's not going to place um, the OG in the top tier. And that is certainly what I am going to do. And Scream is iconic for a reason, right? It lands so well. All the performances are so strong and so fun. And it's bizarre that sort of when you rewatch them, when you know the ending, that Billy is so obviously guilty. He's so shifty and dodgy throughout. And yet the film sort of convinces you he's not. And his performance toes that line and sort of convinces you that he's not. Um, and I, I like he's threatening and charming, and he and Matthew Lillard, who is going to crop up later on in the list. These guys sort of defined. They really defined, um, essentially what a Ghostface should be. They set the bar, and when you set the bar, you kind of have to be in the top tier. Um, Scream 4, one of the two killers here, Charlie Walker, played by one of the Culkins. Which one? Kieran, I think. The implication, so in the film, he's sort of presented as this film nerd, and the implication is that he is responsible for most of the killings in the film, and they're sort of particularly violent and brutal and quite unpleasant. Um, but again, he's not a character that I particularly love. He's not particularly interesting. He doesn't really leave a mark, and he's very much the number two to his teammate. Whereas you get the feeling some of these other partnerships, genuine partnerships, he's essentially sort of a lackey, a hired gun, um, one that doesn't overly leave too much of a mark, really. Um, so when it comes to Charlie, I would place him in the lower ranks as well. Um, do I want to be D? Do I want to be D? I'm feeling D. We'll go with D. And I think again D is kind of where we're going to stay with our next killer. This is Quinn Bailey. So the third killer I say third killer. We have obviously there's the killer at the start who's not on this list for whatever reason. But yes, the third killer in the sort of the main storyline. Quinn is kind of the thing. So Liana Lirato, who is always really charming and fun, and sort of her dynamic with Tara, with Sam, sorry, as the housemate, is quite fun. And how the film sort of tries to insult us with this switcheroo, in which Quinn is supposedly killed halfway through the film, which means we just get a lot less time with her. It's interesting, Paul, and sort of I find the actress really charming in other stuff I've seen her in. She was in what is it, Totally Killer, and based on a true story, the sort of the crime TV show. And she was quite a charming, fun presence, but there's not that much of the presence because she's not in half the film. As you can say about these other characters is that they are in essentially the entire film. I don't know where I want to place her. Again, I feel like D is probably the place to go. Um, yeah, that's feeling right. I might rearrange these towards the end, but that's feeling right for the moment. Um, Jill. Jill, the other mastermind of Scream 4, and the Ghostface that is quite frequently touted as the one who is essentially most likely to have got away with it, but for a silly mistake towards the film's climax. This is a Ghostface who's after fame and the sort of the status that comes with being the survivor, like Sydney. And Jill, I think, is brilliant as well. I mean, again, I'm placing her at the top. This is Emma Roberts, who's always a really sort of compelling and fun presence. And she sort of turns on the darkness, really, when she needs to. Um, and I really like her. I like her sort of in that sort of this dynamic as kind of Queen Bee, but not really in the friend group, as being sort of the number two, to Sydney in the sort of the survivor stakes, and then this sort of wonderful sequence in which she sort of makes herself look like the survivor by sort of incredible acts of sort of self, essentially making up as if she was attacked and fought and survived. It's really good, and I really think Scream 4, if it had ended, obviously we have two more films to come, but if Scream 4 had ended at the scene in which Jill is taken off to hospital and no one's entirely sure what happened, we're not sure if Sydney lived or died. Yeah, that would have been a really, really compelling ending. That would have been really, really strong. She's sort of this social media star before social media was really a thing. Wes Craven there being really ahead of the times, and in his last film, and yeah, I think again Jill is an S tier Ghostface. I really think so. Let's move ahead to Roman. So Roman, played by Scott Foley, who is the soul killer in Scream 3, although sort of there's a lot of stories of behind the scenes drama and that. I'm going to link to a video down in the chat of Zach Cherry, sort of the Scream YouTuber, who sort of discusses the killings in this film and the idea that there should have been a second killer, as there was in original drafts. And so Roman is this Hollywood director who's involved in the film. Sort of the film version of Stab, which is sort of fictionalizing the in-universe events of the first film. And it is later transpires, it's later revealed, that he is Sydney's secret brother, and that he sort of pulled the strings to make Billy and Stu kill Sydney's mother in the first film. And there's a lot going on with Roman. This is quite a complicated film to an extent, because it crams in a lot of backstory and sort of retconning and stuff. There are props to Roman for sort of being the only sole Ghostface. The feasibility of that is discussed in the video I've linked below. But then, sort of towards the end, there's this sort of wonderful sequence where he takes off his mask and reveals himself to Sydney, and she has no idea who the guy is, because I don't know that their paths cross. He's all right. All right is all I can go with. It's not insultingly bad. Although there is a scene in which he sort of essentially fakes his death that doesn't work. It doesn't work for me one bit. I think he's all right. He's just in the middle, really. Where am I going to put him? Like, he needs to be. I'm gonna pop him. I'm gonna pop him as a C tier. But I think that's probably the right place for the moment. I think. Skip ahead. So Scream 2022, the fifth film in the series, one that so our two killers here are next to each other, Amber and Richie, and their thing is essentially bringing back all the legacy cast so they can sort of put the world to rights in what is essentially a stab at sort of Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi, sort of providing new material for stab films so they can sort of be true to the original, as it were. It's a motive that I don't overly love, and the sort of the recall legacy sequel thing works, but less so. She has the honour of having killed one of the key legacy characters. So it is Amber, by sort of logically who must have killed Dewey. In a scene that remains both heartbreaking and frustrating in equal measure. Mikey Madison, I don't particularly like her presence in the film. In the friend group, she seems sort of very disconnected. I mean, I don't overly love the cast, I'll be honest. And again, considering this is sort of an Oscar-winning actress now, who'd have thunk? Demi Moore was robbed. Yeah, I love her again. I find her a bit of an average Ghostface. I don't find her particularly threatening or interesting. I'm going to place her. Where am I going to place her? Where am I going to place her? I don't know. I'd spring as high as B. I'm gonna put her as a C tier Ghostface as well. I just don't love the character, and I find the motivation to be really, really weak. And the same thing is true of Richie as well, her partner in crime. So he's Sam's boyfriend, the main character, Sam's boyfriend. And I guess the same logic underpinning his thing. It's given away quite early, and he's the killer as well. Based on sort of cues that he's not meant to be familiar with this franchise at all, and yet sort of immediately knows all about the films and has a starstruck reaction when he meets Dewey for the first time. Yeah, whatever you say, the strong point of these songs is not really the killers. But I find sort of Jack Quaid just to be sort of more generally just sort of likable and interesting screen presence than Mikey Madison. So I'm going to rank him sort of slightly higher. Because his snivelling as Sam kills him in the sort of the final sequences, when he really, really gets to suffer. It's a very cathartic moment. Am I gonna? Yeah, I'm gonna put him as a B tier. we may as well use all the rows, right? Spoilers for later. Yeah, I would place him as a B tier. I I think that's a fair reflection of how I feel about them. Yeah, let's go with that. Okay. The second half of the original, Stu Mack and Matthew Lillard. Again, is there any doubt where this is going? We all know this is going to the top as well. I put him there. Do I want to put him higher than Billy? Do I want to do that? I might do that, yeah, just for the shock of him being revealed as a sort of a second killer. Of course, Matthew Lillard's screen presence always likable, always funny and dark in equal measure. And we know, time of recording, sorry, that Lillard is returning for Scream 7 in some capacity, but I don't know how yet, and I'm very, very excited for it. I'd put him top. I think they're sort of there's I think there's close proximity between them. I don't think one is massively leaps and bounds better. And on another day, I would happily swap the order around. And really, with the top three, I would happily swap the order around any day. And this is how I'm feeling today. I'm going to put Stu from sections higher than Billy. We'll remain to see what sort of Scream 7 does with the character or not. That will be one for down the line. So I'll keep you posted on my thoughts on that one. And lastly, just for some reason, we've wound up with the final two killers, and they're the two killers from Scream 2. I don't really get the order of this list, but there we go. Mickey and Mrs. Loomis, and played by Timothy Oliphant and Laurie Metcalf. Mickey, again, is an interesting one. I don't think he crops up particularly. He doesn't seem to have too much to do. And he's sort of quite obviously the villain in a way. When it is revealed, he sort of really gets to ham it up and sort of be incredibly violent and brutal. And again, the implication is that he's sort of committed most of the murders. Often I find a sort of very, again, your screen presence again, but do I rank him as an A tier? No, I'm feeling that. He's certainly, yeah. I think that feels right. But I think really the sort of star of Scream 2 in terms of the Ghostface is Mrs. Loomis, Laurie Metcalf. Who is a phenomenal plot twist. In that she's this figure who sort of essentially hounds Gale all film, sort of presented as a reporter. And is not someone that I ever realistically considered even as a suspect, because she's essentially a side character throughout. And the revelation that she is the mother of Billy from the first film, is fantastic. It lands so well. She is sort of, I think, in terms of the twist killers in this franchise, she is by far the most effective one. And then when she's revealed, of course, she gets to go sort of full dramatic, and it's brilliant. I said I was going to use all the rows, so this sort of perhaps is no surprise where we wind up with Mrs. Loomis. Again, I think that she can't be considered an S tier Ghostface. In my eyes, simply because essentially by the nature of the twist in which she's revealed, kind of she's sort of concealed away or sort of a peripheral presence on most of the film, which limits the time we get to spend with her, the time we get to enjoy her. And so for that reason, I can't rank it as high as I do the Ghostfaces, the characters that we get to enjoy all film. But I think that's probably how I'd rank her very, very highly. And of course, having someone as sort of renowned as Metcalf playing your killer is always a strong point as well. So yes, there we go. Those are my rankings. Is there anything here I would want to swap around? I don't think so. I think I'm fairly happy with that. And I'm very, very intrigued to see what we do with Scream 7, how things fit into the franchise and how they would fit into this list. But yeah, this is my list. So sort of, it's quite interesting, really. The older films, those Ghostfaces have kind of risen to the top. The lower tiers, especially the bottom two, are sort of populated with the newer films. So yeah, I don't know. We'll wait and see what happens in Scream 7. This is very much the thing. I'm so intrigued to see what more there is to do with the Ghostface. A killer who is sort of stretching credulity after Scream 4 really, but at a push. So it'd be interesting to see sort of what comes next and how they might fit into this list. And I would be very intrigued. Hopefully, I've not been too heretical near the top. I suspect there may be sort of more controversial opinions towards the middle and bottom of this list. But I would love to hear from people who are fans of the franchise, who've seen all of the films and sort of have their own thoughts. What have I got wrong? What have I got right? And what would be your rankings for Ghostface Killers? And please do comment below and let me know. I would love to hear it. I genuinely really would. Because yeah, and no, I'm going to leave it. I'm very tentative and unsure about where I place things, but I think I'm going to leave it there and have it as that is my ranking because I would love to hear more. And I will put out something about Scream 7, and after it's released and I've seen it and we sort of know what's going on there. I very, very carefully avoided spoilers, and so I don't know very much at all. I'm looking forward to finding out more. Um, Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and make sure to subscribe and say comment either with your Ghostface rankings or indeed with any videos you'd like me to do on the sort of the horror front or the skills front as I do in my Monday videos. And thank you so much for watching. And I will look forward to seeing you all in the next one.